advice would you give to a high school, junior high school, senior that's getting ready to figure out what to do in life?
Stick with it and give it your all. I mean, find something that you want to do, but stick with it. You know, don't flop around, don't jump from job to job, don't waste your time going to college if it's not for you.
I don't care if somebody has a degree, I don't care, like none of that matters to me. I care about more so I'm looking for their character. Hey everybody, welcome back to the FIP Printing Pros podcast. Today we got our guest with us, Justin Godwin, owner of Rome Electric. You always got my co-host with me, Chris Lockwood. And just to kind of start us off, Justin, why don't you tell us a little bit about, I guess, your business, what you're currently working on, and things like that before we jump into other things.
Well, I am a state licensed electrical contractor. Been in business for 7 years now. I primarily do service and repairs. We do a little bit of new construction we mix in there. But my primary goal for my business is to help out homeowners and be there when they need us most.
Okay. Do you do like commercial as well, I'm assuming?
We do.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. I know you've helped me, like coming in to do some stuff for me, so.
Done a little bit of work in this building, actually.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you do, is there anything like a specific niche that you like really hone in on or anything like that other than just?
Being the horse capital of the world, you know, we're very heavily involved in the equestrian community. So horse barns, riding arenas, you name it. I mean,
Okay.
It doesn't stop for us. So
Now, was that like what generally, I'm not a big like known electrician, so like, especially in the horse world, what makes that so much different than just General Electric?
the ability to work with owners. I don't need general contractors in my business. So, you know, a lot of the customers I have already built a barn, or they've already hired somebody to come in and build a structure for them. And now they need to light it up, or they need fans in there, or,
Okay.
you know, they need power for their accessories. So
Gotcha.
we come in after the fact and we light it up for them.
So is it pretty typical, because we talked about this on a previous podcast, we talking about your avatar and like how you target, who you target. I think we even brought up, I don't remember if it was electricians or plumbers we brought up. It was one of the two, but we talked about how, you really want to find who your customer is. So you mentioned that you mainly do like people that currently have, houses or barns or whatever, and you come in and do a lot of repairs, service calls, stuff like that.
New construction.
You do a little bit of new construction, but did you find yourself gravitating towards one or the other, or is it just whatever works available is what you're going to do?
Service I gravitated towards. I grew up, I'm a second generation electrical contractor. My dad had a very successful business here in town. I came up in that business through the trenches, started at the bottom, earned my title, earned my way here. Wired the Marion County Building Department when I was 19 years old. I ran that project, as a new electrician. We did multiple school projects, and extensions around town, doctors' offices, you name it. I mean, we were very heavily involved. When the recession hit, there was kind of a flood in the market. This is the '08 recession, and a lot of the new construction in the cookie cutter houses, when their work dried up, they came over into our sector, and we did not have a service department. We were new construction all the way. I kind of had a knack for the service, with the size of projects, you got 20 guys working underneath of you, there's going to be issues at times. So I was able to come back and always figure out where the problems were. And I knew that was a good spot for me. I ended up leaving my dad. We went from about 40 people to just him and I left him, got tired of bumping heads with my dad. And, I wanted a father, not a boss.
Yeah.
And I ended up leaving and went to work for another company here in town, and they offered me a service position. So I was running all over the state, servicing Pilot gas stations, CenturyLinks. And again, I had that knack for service. They're the ones who talked me into getting my license, and I ended up leaving them, went back to work for my dad, continued studying for my license, and once I got my license, I said, "Hey, Dad, this is where we kind of need to steer the business." And He was still heavily involved in the new construction area and didn't want to do the service, but I saw the necessity to have a service division to be recession proof. You know, I always wanted to be there at the other end of the phone to take on those calls for homeowners, which is just like an auto mechanic. You know, they're there to service your car. Not everybody can buy a new car. Well, not everybody can buy a new house.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be there to fix people's issues. And being that I was good at that, and I was like, this is the way I'm going to steer my business. So I went out on my own, and that's what I started doing. And as I've grown, I have to have the new construction side, you know, to keep everybody busy, because service is not an everyday phone call. It's not an everyday project when you're doing service.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just opened the doors. You know, my dad always asked me, what is service? What is service? And it's like, well, being there for my customer. So, I mean, I have service customers who needed a couple lights changed out, and now it's turned into a barn or a greenhouse. We just had a greenhouse we finished up for a customer. But it's been one project after another, and it was just being service driven, you know. Yeah. They call, we answer the phone, we show up, we get the job done.
Now, when you say license, what kind of license was that for?
State licensed electrical contractor.
Okay, so not just being a certified electrician or whatever it is, that's something on top of that?
So I'm unlimited. And in the state of Florida, you cannot operate a business unless you have passed your state exam to be a licensed contractor. Gotcha. There is no journeyman requirement for the state of Florida. So basically everybody who's out here, you know, is...
Can you explain what that is?
A journeyman?
Yeah. Like what's the and the reason I want to go down this path real quick, and I know we want to get to some of your more interesting background stuff, but there was someone made a comment. I was listening to something the other day that for the first time in a long time, more people are registering for trade schools than is registering for college. It was something like that. It's like the numbers are starting to flip, and it's because I think the younger generation is recognizing that going to college
and the gap.
You know, well, the gap number one, but going to college, you know, AI is replacing a lot of jobs.
I was going to say that. I'm reading a book right now about AI and what it's going to do. So it's going to take that away from the.
I'm not going to be able to go to ChatGPT and say, fix my lights.
Right.
The lights won't come on. Like, that's not going to happen. So a lot of people are going to that. So I think it'd be just kind of interesting to hear what and I know that Florida's going to be a little bit different, but what's the typical journey for someone? I know it's kind of the same for like, you know, a lot of your trades like masonry and carpentry, electrical, holy crap, I couldn't find a word, plumbing and all that. But what's the journey? What would it typically look like?
If in the state of Florida, you only have to have 5 years experience in the trade with a certain amount in 3-phase power. And there's some other requirements that you got to have, but there's no schooling. So you have to have your hours in the field. Our trade school that we have is through the Florida Electrical Contractors Association, or Florida Association of Electrical Contractors. It's a weird acronym. But they've got a trade school, and it's very technical. So you're going to learn your code book, your technical side. You're not going to actually learn how to go out in the field and be an electrician. You know, that's why you have to have that school coincide with OJT. So you can't be in that trade school without working for an electrical contractor.
And for those of you who don't know, OJT is on-job training.
Yes. So they've got to get a certain amount of hours. This is all through the state. And again, you don't have to go in, you know, you don't have to come to work for me and go into the apprenticeship program. I did 1 semester in the apprenticeship program, and it was too low speed for me. This is when I was wiring the building department, and I was in my first year, and they were teaching me how to read a blueprint. And I was just, I couldn't do it. At 19 years old, there was too much life going on, and I didn't have time to go backwards. So it was, I called it quits, and I went into the field full time and, you know, studied. I, you know, bought DVDs. So I was learning the technical side at home of what I needed to learn to get my EC license, electrical contractor. And I did that on my own, but I had multiple years. I've been doing this 23 years now. So by the time I had that, I think I was 15 years in my experience. So
now I've got some other friends that are electricians too, and I think maybe one of the things you touched on is he had to like work under somebody for like so many years as an apprenticeship. Like I think that's what you mentioned. Like how long do you have to do that to then like there's so many like steps, and maybe this was in Nebraska where I lived,
And
so maybe it's
state,
different.
It's state by state.
Yeah.
So I can't even take my license to Georgia and be reciprocated without retesting. And there's certain states that will reciprocate other states, but Florida is one of the most strict states we have as far as licensing.
Okay.
So it doesn't always show in the building practices, but it does with your contractors, I believe.
With how strict it is on electricians here, you think maybe we wouldn't have so much issues with our power grid here.
Yeah. Which, shout out to our power companies because they do a very good job.
That part, yes.
Yeah, especially during storm season. Hard to work with at times, but they do an absolutely amazing job when it comes to keeping us up and running. Been here all my life. Been a couple weeks without power before, and in the last few years, they've really stepped their game up. And I think that is also a big contributing factor to the fact that other states come here. They gear up for storm season. They come here to help us. Same thing, Texas gets hit, Louisiana, the coastal areas get hit. Our guys are going out there too. So it's a team effort. And I'm a big believer in the team side, and that's what I preach to my guys at Rome Electric is team. We got to be team players because if we can't rely on each other, we don't have anything.
The funny thing you say about that is during one of the hurricanes that were coming through, we have family. My wife has family in Louisiana, and they wanted us to get out. They were really worried about this hurricane. I wasn't so worried, but obviously, when her dad and everybody was worried, we were like, all right, we'll go. So we left and went there. On our way in, or on our way out on I-10, I'm from Norfolk, Nebraska. One of our MPPD guys from Norfolk, Nebraska passes us on I-10, and I was like, no way.
Hey, I know those guys.
I was like, that's crazy. Like a small town, Norfolk, Nebraska, like passing me in Florida here. I thought that was kind of crazy to see that. But like you said, they were coming in to stage up. I have some friends that worked at MPPD, so I texted them and told them I just saw one of their trucks, and he's like, oh yeah, they're coming down to stage up and get ready for the storm coming in and everything like that. I thought that was pretty cool. The fact that somebody from Norfolk, Nebraska was coming down.
It's neat to watch those guys, and you see them gearing up. Social media side for me is when I get to see it, but it's still cool to see all the different colors of the trucks and the guys, and
yep.
It's an appreciation for them for sure. I mean, it's a cool job. I'm sure.
I think they have agreements amongst different states that depending on the location, like. Because if it's going to hit Georgia and Florida or something like that, you're not going to have Georgia people come down here or Florida people. We're going to have Nebraska and Kansas and Missouri and Texas.
Correct.
All those they're way far enough away.
Guys that aren't going to be affected.
Yeah, that's smart too.
Yeah.
And then you see the same thing when they have tornadoes and stuff. You'll see them heading that way to go help out. So no, that's awesome. So going back a little bit to the journey and everything, what advice would you give to a high school senior, high school junior, high school senior that's getting ready to figure out what to do in life? What direction would you give them right now?
Stick with it and give it your all. I mean, find something that you want to do, but stick with it. Don't flop around. Don't jump from job to job. Don't waste your time going to college if it's not for you. I mean, we all know. I did a semester of college and realized this is, of course, that kind of spins back to some of the other part of the story we haven't gotten to yet. But, college is not for everybody. And I personally don't feel that my high school did enough to prepare me for the college world. I wanted to be a sports agent. I wanted to, which I had no idea what that was, and neither did anybody else. Come to find out, I just needed to be a lawyer. But nobody knew how to advise me on that. So, when I went to college, I was taking classes and sitting there wondering why I'm taking chemistry class, and this has nothing to do with what I want to do with my life. So, I'm big into promoting the trades to these kids. I'm a board member of MCBIA, the Marion County Building Industry Association. We've teamed up with the school board, and we've got a program out at Lake Weir High School. And I say we do what we can to mentor the kids, but it's 100% on the school and Lake Weir High School teachers they've brought a construction academy back in.
Really?
That's good.
Yes. So they're actually building a shed, windows, door framing. They're doing the whole 9 yards, the electrical on the inside of them. So it's a very cool thing to get involved with these kids and see that, there's an avenue outside of college. And I think that's what we got to do really is we need to get these areas in front of kids sooner.
Yeah.
So they have an idea because,
Yeah,
you
well, they don't
you
have shop
graduate,
class,
where do
yeah.
you go? It's like you came out of the military. I know a lot of military guys that, they have that same issue. We're out of the military now, but
What
this
do we
has
do?
been life. This is structure. Where do we go?
Yep.
It's the same thing for our youth, in my opinion. We don't have any way to catapult them into their next level or into their future. So we need to get that trade school or something, find out what's grabbing the kids' attention, and then stick with it.
Well, when I say we, I use the proverbial we. College has been pushed for the last 30 years. And I think now there's a lot of the younger generation that's starting to realize, it's not what it doesn't do what it was supposed to. Now, if you're going to go be a lawyer, you're going to go be a doctor, an engineer, like something that's like hyper specialized.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely go to college.
But if you're like the most of us when we graduate, we're like, oh, I don't want to do anything, or I don't know what I want to do, or
I got my AA degree.
yeah.
And speaking from an owner side of things, like I think also even from owner side, you could probably say this. Well, yours is a little different because you need somebody a little more specialized and under some little bit in knowledge. But I mean, for the most part, like I don't care if somebody has a degree. I don't care. Like none of that matters to me. I care about more so I'm looking for their character,
People.
their willingness to like learn and hopefully, you can never tell if somebody's gonna fully stick around. But like getting that and like at least feel like they're of their loyalty of like trying to like not just looking for the next job like you said.
Well, I think a lot of business owners fail in the sense that they don't care about their employees' goals. And I think that's another valuable thing. What are your goals? Where do you want to go in life?
Yeah.
How can we help you achieve those goals? Because if we're not doing that for our employees, then we're going to have unhappy employees. If we have unhappy employees, we're going to have unhappy customers. So,
So it made me think of actually just last night I was on social media and there was a guy that I have on there. He is trying to start up his own like food business. Like he's been doing it on the side and everything like that. It doesn't affect work or anything like that. He's working at a place. He put up a flyer on a bulletin board about his business and he literally got like a reprimand for it, for putting in his business that he's trying to do on the side. And it's just like that the type of thing you're talking about, their goals in life. His goal is not to work for that company for the rest of his life. He's trying to build a company on the side that he can eventually leave. As much as I don't want to lose an employee, if somebody wants to do something with their life like that, I want to help them. Like I want to mentor them. I mean, work when you're working, but if that's your ultimate goal, I'll help you like along the way. Like, and there's just not much of that.
yeah. Yeah, it's a shame, really. I mean, but that's, I guess, kind of the capitalist society that we live in, and we've all been under that umbrella for so long and that understanding that it's, I know a lot of business owners that got sour because somebody left them, and I'll screw them because they left me, and it's like, I've always been one, train them good enough to leave, pay them good enough to stay type of mentality. But again, I've also wanted to have an environment that people wanted to come to work. I didn't want you to, I dreaded, like I said, I left my dad because I didn't have a father and son relationship there. Love my dad to death. No hard feelings. We've got a great relationship now, but we were two headstrong people, leaders, that had different ideas, and he's the senior, and I was always the junior, so I was never gonna, even as vice president of the company, I was never gonna have a real say-so in that because it was his money, his finances, his everything, and that was part of why I finally too had to step out and say, this is what I got to do with Rome. Because I'm not going to learn it. And, a lot of the stuff that I've learned was self-taught. It was my dad saying, this is the job, figure out how to get it done. And, so I do that with my employees too. Even the younger ones that come through the door, I tell them, you're going to learn fast. It's going to be fast paced because you got to step up to the plate. You know, we got to weed out, like you said, the ones that don't necessarily need to stay there. You got to get them out of the way.
Yep.
You know, and you think you're going to have somebody who's going to be a lifer, and you know they've got a different plan, and it's a constant rebuild, especially for a small business. I've got 4 employees in the field right now, myself and my office manager. So that's 6 of us, and it still takes a lot to operate and manage that, even though it's so small. Sorry, I kind of losing track of my mind there.
Oh, you're good. We were talking about basically about the college and employee goal, like how that all ties in together and everything like that.
So my thing is, like I said, I remember now. I give a task to my employee that I know that they've done, but they may not be 100% on it. But it gives them the opportunity to know, all right, call me if you have an issue, but go out and try it, you know?
Yep.
And it gives them now some sort of self-esteem, because hell, wow, the boss is trusting me to go out and do this, and I did it. You know, so now instead of being afraid to go to the next job, like, oh man, that was easy. You know, they can now have, like I said, that self-esteem to go out and do the next project and not have a fear of tackling it, or have a fear of, well, is the boss going to get on to me? Am I going to screw up? Or is he not going to be there to answer the phone? Or, you know, because I'm not that type either. You know, if you got an issue, call me. Let's walk through it. Send me pictures. You know, there's a lot of things I can troubleshoot in my mind because there's so many years of seeing different things. And then there's some things that I'm just like, I've never seen this before. I have no clue.
Let's figure it out. You know, I see that with my kids. I got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. And the other day, I made my 12-year-old mow the yard. And the grass wasn't too tall. And when I first taught him, I'm like, you look for the line that your tire made when you came this way, and you follow it back the other way. He does about 2 passes, and he calls me, he goes, I can't see the line. And I'm like, well, figure it out. He goes, well, can I wait till the grass is taller? I'm like, no, it's tall enough. I was like, you figure it out. It better be mowed when I get home. There's consequences, no more video games.
No video games.
He suddenly was able to figure out how to find where to cut the grass. But the point of that is, just like you said, you have to give them the opportunity. You have to give them the opportunity to succeed as well as the opportunity to fail. Mm-hmm. And then when they fail, that's when it's important to be there and say, okay, look, here's what you did wrong, but here's how you do it right the next time. So let's learn from it. Instead of how a lot of things happen these days, whether it's in school, whether it's in college, whether it's in life, I think people have gotten so conditioned to, if I don't do it right, if I don't do it perfect, I'm going to get in trouble, and I'm just going to get a reprimand, I'm going to get a write-up or whatever. And for you to take the time to say, look, do it, figure it out. If you need help, call me. Don't sit there and stare at the wall or the electrical outlet going, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not going to fix itself. So let's talk it out, but I want you to try first. And I think that is so, so important to do these days.
Yeah, for sure.
How many times in life are you going to come to a roadblock and there's not going to be somebody there to call? You got to figure out a way to get around it. Again, you've heard some of my story before we got on this podcast, and probably get to that stuff, but a lot of those things in life were roadblocks or some form of a roadblock. How do we overcome that? And again, back to leaving my dad, that's where I had to move around that roadblock to continue forward. It's why I have our slogan now, powering you forward, just because of the stuff I've been through. You got to keep going.
So you're talking about, so why don't we jump into it? We've kind of gotten over like the business side of things, where you're at a little bit right now, what you do. Let's now talk about more your journey in life. Obviously, I don't know where you want to start. I know you kind of had some stuff back in early high school or late high school, kind of early college age.
So I want to start off by saying I am saved by the grace of Jesus. I'm very proud of that. I always have been. Come from a very faith-filled family. Certain times in life I was led astray by friends and outside sources. Grew up, I was an only child, didn't have a lot of friends. My parents divorced when I was young. So I spent a lot of time with my mom, and every other weekend I was with my dad, and friendship was a hard thing to grasp for me because of the split schedule and the split households and moving from a couple different schools and just trying to finally fit in. I wore big Coke bottle glasses back in the day, so I was like the first official nerd, and it was hard for me to build friendships. When I got into high school, I formulated a friendship with a all-star football player, good friend of mine in high school. We kind of fell off over the years. He got lost. But him and I became really good friends, introduced me to a different crowd of people. So I was now kind of in a cool crowd, but still an outcast. I wasn't a great athlete. But I had a group of what I thought were my friends at the time. And, my junior year, I got my first girlfriend, which was so exciting, got a hot girlfriend, and she got pregnant. And that was midway through my junior year. Also, during the end of my junior year, my dad sold his first business that he created, which was a very large electrical contracting company here in Ocala. He started that back in the 70s, and after 25 years, he sold out his share of the company. So I was somewhat lost in that period of going through that transition, and I didn't know how to tell my parents that my girlfriend was pregnant. And so we hid that for a long time until we could no longer hide it, which was the summer before my senior year, and finally broke the news. September of my senior year, I had quit all my sports, quit playing baseball, quit playing football. My dad reopened his company, his new company, Encore Electric, which has been open since 2003. He opened that for me to have a job so I could provide for my child. And in September of my senior year, started hearing some rumors flying around, and ended up doing a DNA test and found out that baby was not mine.
So how old was
I was
the baby?
17.
But how old?
The baby was 2 months old.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yep. But, my family was showing her off, and leads me to my stance on abortion, too, if you ever want to talk about that. Because we were, as 17-year-old kids, had no idea what we were doing. We thought that was the only way out. And that child is 20, 21 years old now, and had that happened, I was making a choice for a child that was not mine and a life that was not mine. So I have a very strong stance on abortion now, of being against it and being pro-life because of that situation that I was in. And I mean, that girl's very successful and an adult now. So it's what could I have done if I had taken that life type of thing.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we split up. I had a lot of money saved up from, just working over the summer and working OJT. And I was getting out after my first 2 periods. We had 4 periods a day. My second 2 periods were OJT. So I would take off at lunch and go to work for my dad in the field. And after that, I had a ton of money saved up. I cut my friends off in that time because it was, trying to be a dad. And all of a sudden, I came back to my friends, and my friends were all smoking weed. They were partying. It was their senior year. And it's like, all right, well, man, what have I been missing, And I dove off into that, and then being the kid with money, it was like, hey, Justin, why don't you...
Got even more popular.
Yeah.
Why don't you go buy all...
Yeah, why don't you go buy it all, and, we don't need to go off to a dealer and get in trouble for going to a dealer. We could just get it from you, and we'll all be friends. And so it's like, all right, cool, I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, let's go, I mean, rap was a big thing back in the day. You're listening to the rappers, and like, man, wow, they're riding on Spreewells, and, everybody's living the dream, flossing and diamonds, and wow, what a life, And I had just come out of thinking that I'm going to be a second-generation business owner of this huge electrical company. Now I have, nothing. I'm starting over at the bottom. What can I do? So very shortly after that was a very short-lived entrepreneurship. I got busted. Went to jail actually 3 times within a year span, and it was wrong place, wrong time, wrong people, wrong crowd. And I realized sitting in a jail cell the week of Christmas in 2005 that life was not a life that I wanted to live. I didn't want to live in fear of being pulled over every time, you're driving down the road. I just said, I'm done with that. I went back to work for my dad. Part of that was my college career. So I went into college, fighting one of my cases. So I was having to work full time and try to go to college, and under the stress of facing jail time, and I was all messed up. And I said, college is not the way. I've got to go full force into work. And that's when I did the building department, ended up getting adjudication withheld. So I kept all my rights as a citizen, which was huge for me because I'm a big time hunter, always have been. It was just a very short time I was led astray, and that was my biggest fight, was making sure that I was not adjudicated as a felon. And I had some great law help there. I say great, it wasn't really so great, but they got what I needed in the end.
Got done.
Yeah. There was that, and that's kind of the end of that story. End of my troublemaking was at 19 years old, and like I said, I was done.
So from 17 to 19, you went from being a dad to not being a dad, to working to not working, to not partying to being an entrepreneur, to going to jail 3 times, spending a semester in college. And that's insane.
It's a lot.
Holy cow. Most people would have crumbled with the first thing. 17. I'm thinking back, my mom was 17 when I was born. Hell, my mom's mom was 15 when she was born. And most people would crumble under that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, man. That's a testament to
The fact that
your willpower for sure.
Yeah, the fact
Faith.
of pulling yourself
Faith,
out
yeah.
of that and everything, obviously my past with being in law enforcement and stuff like that. It's once you're in that path and you're going down that path, it's hard to pull yourself out.
Yeah.
I've tried to help a lot of people.
Jail
that
is an education institute of its own if you wanted to use it that way.
Very true.
I've come across plenty of people that, they came out, went in, and every time they came out, they had a new plan for success and led them right back to the same place. So,
Yep.
yeah, it was definitely a hole to dig myself out of, and like you said, willpower. It was faith.
Yep.
Turning to God and get me right. That's the only thing.
Were you a Christian before all that happened?
Yeah.
Or okay, so you had that to lean back on and fall back on.
Well, yeah. Every time you're sitting in the back of the car, God, please don't let them take me to jail. Please don't let them take me to jail. So
It's always when we really need it that we reach out.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people forget. That's why you keep God at your forefront. Because if you don't, you're gonna slip.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned before we started recruiting, or you might have said it, you were shot and blown up too, somewhere in this span. So we gotta hear about that.
So at 22, I was working over in Daytona and met my oldest daughter's mother. She was working at a bar establishment over there, and we hit it off and had my daughter at 22. My oldest, she just turned 16 this week, so started driving. That's a whole new world of fears for me.
I got a 15-year-old. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Faith again. But yeah, so we were over at my mom's house for dinner, and after I finished and completed my probation, I still had to have a couple years with no trouble before I could apply for my concealed weapons permit. But I was still allowed to own guns and so on. So I had a handgun, and my next entrepreneurship was raising pit bulls. I thought that was going to be a great idea. So I was trying to sell some puppies, and I had, questionable people coming by the house. So I put my gun on my hip and ended up going over to my mom's house for dinner that night. And this was a new handgun, Springfield XD9, with an internal guide rod laser. And I don't know if anybody knows what that means, but there's a guide rod that your slide rides on that keeps the action moving in the handgun. and inside of that guide rod, they had a laser. So you could turn that laser on and point, shoot, pew. When I bought the gun, the guy had told me something about that laser, and he said, if it turns on, that means you've got it in the wrong position. So I was like, all right, trying to remember these things. Well, we got done with dinner at my mom's, and my wife at the time had something going on, and she was over talking to my mom, like women do, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, I'm ready to walk out the door. I'm like, let me just sit back down at the kitchen table. I'll fiddle with my gun. And I knew that I didn't have the gun loaded because I didn't have my concealed weapons permit. I just had it on my hip. And after the people had left from looking at the dogs, I unchambered the round, put the magazine back in. And as I'm sitting at the bar, I went through the steps to take this gun apart. And the most important step that I missed was dropping the magazine. And it was a brain fart because, like I said, I knew I didn't have one in the chamber. So I'm sitting there and I pull the slide back. I flip the slide release lever. I release the slide, and all slow, easy steps. But when I released the slide, that guide rod laser came on. And I was like, well, why is that happening? I remembered the guy telling me that something's wrong if that laser comes on without you turning it on. And I'm like, I didn't turn this on. What the heck's happening? So, well, I will figure it out after I drop the slide. And the next step to dropping that slide is pulling the trigger. So I was actually still got the powder burn there in my pinky. There's still,
I see it. Yeah.
You might even see a little bit of powder in there if you look real close. But I'm holding the slide and I'm sitting down and I pulled the trigger. Bam! Oh shit! Jumped up, set the gun down, and I look. I'm like, all right. And this looked like hamburger meat at the time. And I said, okay, it's still there. It's still moving, and I'm standing. I'm good. And I look down, and all of a sudden, my leg starts, my jeans started filling with blood, turning red. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. Ripping my belt off, and my first thought is, tourniquet.
Yeah.
I didn't know a whole lot, but I assumed tourniquet. I was worried about the femoral artery. My stepdad was a Marine, and he went with the pressure. I've since learned that the tourniquet is definitely the way to go. But he did a good job. He did put pressure on it. I missed my femoral artery by an inch, but he was there. I'm pretty sure Billy Woods showed up, and he was the officer that responded. I just have this image of Billy Woods being there, and this was back when he worked for OPD.
Yeah. And
he had to come in and clear the scene, and it was such a tough position to be in. I'm laying on the floor in my mom's dining room. I got a cop over the top of me. And at her front door, I can hear the EMS, and the radio's going back. Is the scene clear? Scene's clear. Is the scene clear? Scene's clear. Is the scene clear? The scene is clear! Get in here! That was me laying on the floor. Like, come on, guys, let's go. But I made some good jokes after that one. So after my entrepreneur career, I went into the hospital that night, and I was like, well, I've done this, I've done that. Now I've been shot. I can officially be a rapper.
Got all the street cred now.
Yeah.
That's good.
But yeah, that was Full Metal Jacket. So not a hollow point. Clean in, clean out, no bone, just some muscle damage. I was in the woods a week later on some crutches, back to hunting. So it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, just maybe even a little embarrassment, but
a lot of embarrassment. Which usually when you have an accident, it is embarrassment. Even to the point, a few years later when I got blown up, another embarrassing situation, just because you know better, and it's like I knew. What's the first rule of gun safety? Making sure your gun's unloaded. How did I miss that step? My daughter was 1 year old in the room next door with my grandmother. What if she had been there looking at me? Because my kids are very involved. I teach my kids about my guns. I bring them up into everything that I'm into. So they're all involved. What if she had been there? What if? But it's part of learning. So now I'm extra safe with guns. I'm extra safe around people that I don't know that have guns.
Yeah.
So I go through the steps, check, 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 check.
Yep.
So just a learning experience again.
And sometimes I've been around guys who are military vets that don't even still have the proper, like, we were same situation. We were actually it was, I got out and I had to get my concealed carry. I was like, all right. And while I'm in the class to get the concealed carry, there was like 3 other military guys, and one of these guys, while we're like clearing the weapon, which we know it's not loaded, but I don't like any, like,
Oh, yeah.
no muzzle,
Just in case,
no muzzle pointing at me, and he was like literally like, I was like, dude, like back off, like, and he was a ex-military guy. It's like, you should know better, man. Like,
There's no clearing barrel here.
yeah. So I mean,
He was actually special forces.
yeah, special. Yes, exactly.
Plenty of those, believe me.
So
24 years there.
I mean, at least you weren't even like, you were down here, probably I'm assuming down like this, so you weren't like
No, there was no muzzle flashing
Yeah.
anybody. It was just like, all right.
Yeah.
Whoa! Yeah.
But it happens. I mean, I've almost made that. Not that I've always. Thankfully, I'm a double checker, triple checker, like kind of person, which annoys my wife like crazy because of it. But I'm the type that literally will double check and triple check something like multiple times, especially something like
yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Nothing in there. We're
Yep.
good.
And then just in case of me racking it fast didn't work, now I got to open it up, inspect
Yeah.
it. Like, but I've seen stuff like that where I have been on scene where accidents have happened because of just things like that, and it just
We lost an OPD officer to an AD on a training range a couple years ago.
oh really?
Yeah, back before you guys moved here. Yep. They were out on the gun range, and everybody had got done qualifying or doing what they were doing, and he was shot.
Oh man, yeah.
Passed away.
You
So, go ahead.
well, I wanted to touch too because you had mentioned your kids' involvement and stuff like that, which now also understanding, because I didn't know that about your dad and how you guys kind of came up in the business a little bit too, is your son is very heavily involved. I don't know how much your daughter is, but I know your son is like very heavily involved. He's like coming with you to calls all the time.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
come when you've come to. He came with you, and I've seen just you like trying to literally teach him. And he's what? How old is he? 7?
6.
Okay, 6.
Just turned 6 in March.
And that kid probably knows more about electrical stuff than I do.
It's cool, and he picks up on everything. I mean, just it blows my mind how smart he is. And we were sitting in a restaurant the other day, and he looked up and he's like, "Daddy, that guy's got your sunglasses on." The guy just walked through the door, and I'm like, I turn around, holy smokes! How did you even? He's across the room. How do you pick up on something like that? But he's so observant. And I have no desire for my kids to come into this trade unless they want to. So my 16-year-old, I just had to have that talk because she's driving and she's wanting a job. And we've always told her, your job is school.
Yep.
As long as you're in school, that is your main job. And we've always paid her for her grades. So I built up a nice savings account for her. And I had to sit down with her the other day and tell her, like, we went to a career fair, and it was McDonald's and Burger King, and it was, all your restaurants. And, I don't look down upon anybody, so don't take this the wrong way, but I know the caliber of person that my daughter is and the future that she has. And I told her, I said, look around this room, look at these people. These are the people that are going to be in those jobs. This is not the room for you unless again, I mean, I don't look down upon anybody, but you do have to figure out where you are, and what your lifestyle is. And, you can be the same as them, or you can go up here. The sky is the limit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But, I told her to really look at the people and look at those jobs and figure out, how much I complain about fast food workers. So is that really the position that you want to be in? Or do you want to take the skills that you're learning, which she's in yearbook club, FFA, there's so many things that she's into. I said, you can take that and run with what you have. You can be whatever you want. But what I want is for you to get good grades so you can make those choices for yourself. So you need to focus on school. And, this summer now she is a W-2 employee for us. And she's going to be doing some of our networking events and doing photography, basically the same thing she was doing for her yearbook club, but doing for Rome now. And I told her, I said, if you want to be somebody in this business, you always have the opportunity. If you don't, I am doing this to support you. I am good at what I do, and that's what my business is for, is to take care of you kids and make sure that you have a future. What you do with your future is on you. So my two youngest, 6 and 4, boy and girl, they are homeschooled, and they spend a lot of time, our office is at home, so they spend a lot of time in the office, coming in, seeing things. My 6-year-old sees me working on drawings because I do a lot of blueprints, being a a contractor that does owner builds and working with homeowners. I do a lot of my own plans, and I do those all by hand. So my son will come in and he'll watch me doing that. He'll get his own paper and he'll start doing his own set of plans. And he can identify a toilet. He can identify where the panels are. Like you can give him a real set of blueprints and he can start telling me where things are at.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. It is. And he likes it. And so if he wants to do this one day, he'll have the full opportunity, and I will have been able to teach him as much as I can and share that. And my dad was not an open book like that with me because he was so busy, running a business. He went from a company with 200 people to, starting all over 25 years later, and if he comes from Ocala when the 200 was a dirt road. So they essentially wired most of Ocala. They did a lot of these schools, Westport High School, you name it, they were part of it. Again, we did a lot of wing additions at a lot of the schools around here. But that original company he had support staff in there. So, 25 years later, when I'm coming into the work field, how do you teach me? How do you take away from your business to teach me? I'm fortunate enough that my business is 7 years old. My son is 6 years old. So yeah, I've got 23 years of experience in it, but now I've only got 7 years as a business owner, and I can grow with my kids,
Yeah.
So it gives me that opportunity.
So before we wrap this up, I want to ask you about that, because a lot of times you see businesses that don't make it to the 7-year mark. Hell, they don't make it to the 3-year mark. And especially in the trades, there's a lot of people that go into a trade, they become really good at that trade, then they try and open their own business and they fail. They don't fail because they're a bad plumber or they're a bad electrician. They fail because they're a bad business owner. So what have you been able to do to make that transition? I'm sure you still got struggles, but what are you doing to make that work as a business owner as opposed to an electrician?
And how did you adapt to that?
Yeah.
I'm still learning. I tell people all the time, right now I'm still an electrician with a business. I want to be a business owner with an electrical business. But it is learning. It's failure. You got to fail to learn. So that's why I've become involved with the Marion County Building Industry Association. It's put me in touch with senators, county commissioners, building officials. So when I have an issue with the building department, it's not, hey, you guys screwed up. You don't know who I am. You've never seen my face, and I'm telling you that you're wrong. Oh, this is Justin. Justin's involved. Justin sees the things. Justin goes to the meetings. Justin is trying to make proactive change here, and maybe he's right, but it at least opens the door for a discussion. But I think that you have to be involved. You can't just think I'm gonna go out here, and I've seen it. I've seen guys that have come through my doors, and I knew they were gonna fail because they didn't see what I was doing on the backside. Again, leaving my dad. There were certain things that my dad wasn't doing because it's not the same industry that it was 25, 30, 40 years ago. Everything is evolving. The technology is evolving. So you've got to grow. You've got to network. You just got to stay on top of it. That's a tough question to answer because a lot of people just don't have the drive. As a business owner, the sleepless nights, the stresses, the headaches, how am I going to make payroll? How am I going to do this? So I've been one, I didn't want to use any financing. I wanted to be very generic. I wanted to be generic with my word of mouth. we're dumping more money into promotions and advertisement now, something I didn't think I was ever going to do. And I'm learning how to use OPM, other people's money, because I wait on money a lot of times. You know, we'll do a job and
So
it's
frustrating, isn't it?
Yes, very frustrating.
especially when people realize they can not pay you and get away with it. And so again, that's where I'm learning the business side. All right, yeah, I got a great contract here with this customer, but I didn't.
Your terms are 120 days or something like that.
My terms, or you know, I didn't do an NOC, or I didn't do a notice to owner, or I missed that one tiny little piece of security paperwork that's going to ensure that I get paid. You know, now it turns into a legal battle. Now I have no lien rights on your home. You know, not that I want that, but you know, when you don't pay me, you know.
You know what I ultimately think, though, obviously knowing a little bit about your story, and also what I know it takes to be as an entrepreneur, is it's your willingness or unwillingness to just give up and just accept what's in front of you when you hit the wall or things like that. And I think that's one of the, and I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, there's some businesses that fail because it just, unfortunately, it is what it is. It, you know, or a COVID situation where that knocked a lot of people out, and almost knocked me out, and thankfully I was able to overcome that. But situations in general, when somebody, like we were talking about, goes and switches into now being an owner, when they know how to do the trade, a lot of it, they're going to hit the wall, because every ownership, no matter what you do, you're going to hit walls. Yes. Like it does not matter what you do. There's going to be something that comes up that you have to figure it out. And the ability, the strongest ability, in my opinion, as to succeed as a business owner, is the ability to adapt, overcome, and find a way to make things happen despite odds against you.
Yeah.
And knowing your story, obviously, it sounds like that's something you have definitely dealt with in your life, in personal and business, and just, you just don't take that give up mentality. And I think that's the biggest thing, and ultimately, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
yeah, keep moving forward, always forward. Until we changed our tagline for the business, it was kind of, that's how we roam. And I met with somebody recently, and we were talking, and I said, my personal motto is always forward, because you can't give up. Again, like you said, the roadblocks are going to be there, the gunshots, that those are unexpected. That's what life is. Life is unexpected for the most part. We can tell God our plans, and we'll listen to him laugh. So you got to be willing to shift gears, adjust. How do I move forward? As a hunter, I'm climbing mountaintops, for some of my game that I go after. The path to the top is not straight up. There's zigzags.
Yeah.
All the way up. You're crisscrossing. You're finding the right path. But, there's blowdowns, there's trees, there's roadblocks in that mountain. And that's what life is. Life's a mountain, and if you want to get to the top, you're going to have to face those roadblocks. You're going to have to figure out how to overcome those roadblocks.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect way to end the episode.
Well, how do people get a hold of Rome Electric if they need some work done?
You can call us at 352-327-4434, office at romeelectricinc.com, or www.romeelectricinc.com.
Awesome.
Or Facebook. We're on Facebook too, at Romelec.
Perfect. Well, if you guys are needing any electrical issues or fixed by Rome Electric, or if you have any friends, family looking to build anything like that, they got their own businesses, share, refer over to Justin here at Rome Electric. Obviously, you heard his story. Great businessman, great man in general. And I highly recommend working with him. And until next time, let's grow together.
It's time to step up, yeah, it's grind time, no more letting up, no, running faster, further, no more running up, yeah, giving my all, no more giving up, listen to me, step, it's time to step it up, yeah, it's time to step it up, step, it's time to step it up, yeah, it's time to step it up, it's time to step up.